The sky over Earth burned like an open wound. Entire continents glowed red under orbital bombardment, each blast a silent punctuation mark on the end of an age. From orbit, the planet looked less like a home and more like a dying ember in a cosmic storm. Inside the last functioning command bunker beneath the ruins of Geneva, Admiral Kale stood before a flickering holomap. Her uniform was scorched, her eyes hollow but steady. The lines on her face were etched with exhaustion rather than age. Every minute brought another desperate transmission, every one ending in static. Asia Command has gone dark, her comm officer whispered, voice trembling. No survivors reported. Kale didn't flinch. Then the Abyss Protocol moves to full enactment. Begin Phase 7. Seal all access shafts once they're below pressure depth. The officers exchanged glances. Even in that moment of chaos, the words Abyss Protocol carried a weight that silenced the room. It was humanity's last contingency, a retreat not into space, but into the deepest parts of its own planet. Kale turned to her aide, Captain Varin. How many vessels have made it to subcrust entry? 4 confirmed. Maybe 5. The rest. He hesitated. No readings. Kale closed her eyes briefly, then looked at the holomap again. Earth's defense lines were collapsing in concentric rings, each one shrinking closer to oblivion. Above, the Celeste Dominion fleets moved like silver daggers across the stars, efficient, unfeeling, inevitable. They think this is mercy, she murmured. Extermination in the name of purity. Varin swallowed hard. Then maybe mercy deserves an answer. Kale allowed herself a faint, humorless smile. It will get one. Just not today. The bunker shook violently. Dust fell from the ceiling as a detonation echoed somewhere above. Monitors flared white before stabilizing again. Alarms pulsed in red rhythm, like the heartbeat of a dying beast. Outside the bunker's armored glass, the world was ending in silence. The soundproof barrier muted the screams and explosions into a haunting stillness. It was as if the earth itself had stopped breathing. Kale's daughter, Lena, barely 12, stood near the observation deck, watching the distant horizon where fire met the sea. Her reflection shimmered against the glass like a ghost. Mom, she said softly, why are they doing this? Kale knelt beside her. Because they fear what they don't understand. But we didn't hurt them. No. We just existed. She brushed the girl's hair back, memorizing every detail of her face. The command lights painted them both in a shifting glow of red and blue, the colors of defiance and grief. Listen to me, Lena. You're going down with the second descent group. When you reach the deep zones, stay close to the Guardians. They'll protect you until you follow? Kale hesitated only a moment. Yes. Until I follow. They both knew she wouldn't. Within the hour, the final evacuation began. Hundreds of survivors in pressure suits filed into vertical transport shafts leading miles beneath the ocean floor. The mechanical hum of descent mixed with the muffled sobs of children and the grim silence of soldiers. The air was heavy with unspoken truth. Humanity wasn't fleeing to survive. It was burying itself to evolve. Kale moved through the crowd like a shadow of command, touching shoulders, meeting eyes. These weren't soldiers anymore. They were seeds. When she reached the last shaft, Varin stood waiting. Transmission beacon is ready, he reported. The message will loop for as long as power holds. Good, she said. History should remember the last heartbeat. He hesitated, then asked quietly, do you believe anyone will ever come back up? Kale looked toward the steel tunnel that led into the depths, black, silent, endless. If we're worthy of our name, yes. Varin gave a small nod, then saluted. It's been an honor. Don't say your goodbyes yet, she replied. Say your promises. He smiled faintly before stepping into the descent chamber. The doors sealed shut behind him, locking with a hiss of pressurized air. Kale returned to the command center. The upper atmosphere cameras displayed the incoming Dominion Armada, thousands of ships forming a luminous scar across the heavens. Her remaining officers awaited orders. Cut global transmissions, she said. Route all power to the black box beacon. Make sure the recording runs until the end. She stood before the console, pressed her hand to the biometric pad, and began to speak into the recorder. To whoever finds this, we are the last of Earth's defenders. The surface is lost, but not the spirit. We descend now into the abyss, not in surrender, but in defiance. The darkness will change us, yes. But we will learn. We will build. One day, when the stars forget our name, the abyss will remember. And when it sends us back, we will be something the galaxy can no longer destroy. The system confirmed, message stored. Signal transmitting. She exhaled slowly. Goodbye, sunlight. The bunker's main display erupted in white as orbital lances breached the atmosphere. The shockwave rippled through the mountain, throwing Kale to the ground. She forced herself up, gripping a console as alarms screamed. The structure groaned like a dying titan. Over the static of failing comms came the voice of an enemy commander. Human resistance, you have been extinguished. Your species is concluded. The Celeste Dominion will cleanse what remains. Kale stared at the ceiling, as if through it she could see the alien ships blotting out the stars. No, she whispered. We're only beginning. She keyed the manual override. The bunker's reactors surged, rerouting power to the deep conduits below. The seismic stabilizers failed, but the energy flow to the abyss shafts held steady. If humanity couldn't survive up here, it would survive below. She activated the final command, collapse all surface access. The earth shuddered one last time as the shafts sealed under layers of reinforced stone. The ocean swallowed them whole. A civilization sank into myth. Kale turned to the viewport. Flames consumed the horizon where cities once stood. For a fleeting instant, she imagined the generations that would live beneath the waves, children growing up without sun or sky, learning to breathe different air, seeing the world through new eyes. She smiled faintly. Adapt, my children. That's what we do best. A final blast struck the mountain. The command bunker split in half, collapsing into molten rock. In her last breath, Admiral Kale whispered the words that would echo through centuries of darkness. They send us to the abyss, but the abyss will send us back. And then there was only silence, deep, waiting, eternal. The world beneath the oceans had no light, no horizon, no sky, only layers of darkness stacked upon pressure thick enough to crush steel. Yet humanity endured. It didn't merely survive, it adapted. 3 centuries after the fall, the abyss was no longer a refuge. It was home. The city of Tartarus Deep hung suspended within the black chasm of the Pacific Rift, a fortress of metal veins and glowing arteries. Buildings clung to the trench walls like roots in a colossal wound. Pulses of bioluminescent light rippled through transparent conduits, casting a ghostly blue over corridors where humanity's descendants walked, taller, leaner, with eyes that reflected the deep. They called themselves Abyssals, though some whispered a truer name beneath the pressure: Humans Reborn. Admiral Alara Kale stood on the bridge of the flagship Nereid, gazing at the panoramic window. Beyond the hull stretched an ocean so vast it felt like space, infinite, silent, alive with currents instead of stars. Her second-in-command, Commander Marcus Rian, stepped beside her. Pressure holding steady at 12,000 meters, he said. Thermal reactors are optimal. The lower domes report full capacity. Alara nodded without turning. And the scouts? Returning from the northern vents. Nothing but volcanic residue and dead cables. The old surface channels are gone, all collapsed. Then the past remains buried, she murmured. Marcus crossed his arms, studying her reflection in the glass. Do you still think about it? The surface? Alara's lips curved faintly. Every day. But thinking about the sky doesn't bring it back. He hesitated before speaking again. Maybe it's not supposed to. Maybe we're not meant to go up there again. She finally looked at him. You think evolution is destiny, not choice? He shrugged. We've built cities stronger than mountains, ships that can outlast stars. Maybe the abyss made us what we were always meant to be. Her gaze hardened. The abyss made us survivors, Marcus. But survival isn't the same as living. They descended through a mag-rail tunnel that led to the core dome, a massive sphere of titanium glass surrounded by ancient monuments of those who had perished during the first descent. Inside, researchers moved among glowing consoles, analyzing sonar signals that reached up from the deep abyssal floor. Status of the beacon array? Ilara asked. A scientist turned, her silver pupils dilating under the dim light. Still silent, Admiral. But last cycle we detected something different. Show me. The screen flickered to life. A sonar pulse appeared, faint but distinct, a rhythmic pattern too deliberate to be geological. Marcus frowned. That's no natural echo. The scientist nodded. It's a coded signal. Compressed ancient format. We cross-referenced it with the archives. It matches pre-fall human encryption. For a moment, no one spoke. The hum of the chamber filled the silence, like the deep heartbeat of the world itself. Source? Ilara asked. 70 kilometers beyond the Mariana Fold. Near the old Pacific Ridge. Ilara's expression remained calm, but her mind raced. That ridge had been sealed for centuries, off-limits by decree of the founding charter. Nothing was supposed to exist there. Prepare a deep runner vessel, she ordered. No fleet markings, minimal escort. I'll go myself. Marcus stiffened. You can't be serious. The fold is unstable, and if it's Dominion bait. If it is, she interrupted, then we'll know they're still watching. Either way, the signal came from our kind. That makes it worth the risk. Hours later, the small abyssal craft Spectre slipped from Tartarus Deep, diving through layers of pressure so immense the hull groaned in protest. The abyss was not silent. It was alive with distant roars and the crackle of thermal vents. Streams of molten rock shimmered through the black, painting brief flashes of crimson light. Marcus piloted, his jaw tight. You really think it's a human signal? After all this time? I think someone down here wants to be found, Ilara replied. The sensors spiked as they neared the fold. What appeared ahead was not terrain, but a massive rift splitting the ocean floor, like a wound that never healed. From within, faint lights pulsed in the darkness, rhythmic, intelligent. The signal came again. 3 beats. Pause. 2 beats. Pause. 1. A pattern older than any Dominion code. A heartbeat, human. Ilara leaned forward. Increase gain. Track the source. Marcus obeyed. As they drew closer, a shape emerged from the trench. It was enormous, a derelict structure covered in sediment and coral, half buried in volcanic ash. Human design unmistakable. The faded emblem on its hull read, Arc 3 Abyss Protocol. Marcus's breath caught. It's one of the original descent vessels. And it's still transmitting, Ilara whispered. They docked on the Ark's outer shell. The airlock hissed open, releasing a cloud of ancient vapor. Inside, the corridors were silent and frozen, lined with skeletal remains locked in pressure suits. It was a graveyard, the first generation who had fled here when Earth burned. Ilara moved carefully through the narrow halls. Her helmet lights illuminated faded inscriptions scratched into the bulkhead. For the children of the deep. We kept the flame. They reached the central core, where a single data node still blinked faintly. She wiped away grime, pressed her palm to the surface, and the system awakened, flickering, broken, but alive. A voice emerged from the static. It was faint, distorted, but unmistakably human. This is Admiral Kale, final directive encoded. Project Abyss complete. If you hear this, we made it. Don't forget who you are. Ilara froze. The name struck her like a current through steel. Kale, she breathed. My ancestor. The system continued, fragments of speech weaving through distortion. When they return, show them, the dark remembers. Then silence. Marcus glanced at her. What does it mean? Ilara turned off her helmet light. It means the abyss isn't finished with us yet. They returned to Tartarus Deep carrying the recovered core. Within hours, the data fragments spread across every research hub in the colony. A message buried inside the signal wasn't just a recording, it was a map. A set of coordinates pointing far beyond the trench, past the ocean floor, into the void above. The council assembled in the central hall, scientists, strategists, engineers. The holographic map hovered in the air like a celestial wound, displaying a route through the planetary crust into space. Elara stood before them. The abyss kept us alive for centuries. But the message is clear, it's time to rise. One of the elders spoke sharply. You would risk everything? We are stable here. Safe. The surface is poison, the stars hostile. Safety is the illusion that killed our ancestors, she replied. They buried themselves to wait for a moment like this. We are that moment. The hall fell into tense silence. The council hesitated, fear wrestling with hope. Finally, Marcus stepped forward. I'll fly beside her. Others rose in quiet agreement. The murmurs spread like a current through the room. For the first time in centuries, humanity looked not down into the dark, but up. That night, Elara stood alone on the observation deck. The abyss pressed against the glass, infinite and heavy, yet alive with movement. She thought of the words from the recording, "Don't forget who you are." She touched the window gently. We haven't forgotten, she whispered. We've just chong. The ocean trembled. Far below Tartarus Deep, waves of energy rippled outward from the fold like a heartbeat felt through stone. Instruments across every colony registered impossible readings, pressure shifts, thermal spikes, faint electromagnetic whispers that matched no natural pattern. In the command hall, Admiral Elara Kale studied the data streams cascading across the holotable. The recovered coordinates from the Arc 3 weren't random, they formed a lattice, a directional path climbing through the mantle toward the upper atmosphere. The signal's pushing upward, said Dr. Kelmora, chief xenologist. If it continues, it'll breach the crust in less than a rotation cycle. Elara frowned. After 3 centuries of silence, now it decides to move? Kel hesitated. It's not moving by itself. Something out there is responding. The room went still. The abyss was stirring, and so, it seemed, was the galaxy above. Hours later, Elara stood aboard the Abyss Runner, a sleek exploration vessel built for stealth operations. The ship hummed quietly as it ascended through the black pressure, light from the lower domes fading into nothing. Commander Marcus Rian secured his harness beside her. Fleet Command still thinks you're insane, he said dryly. I'll take that as validation, Elara replied, adjusting her visor. If we wait for permission every time, we'll never touch the sky again. Marcus checked the reactor gauges. We're leaving home territory. Once we cross the boundary ridge, we'll be beyond the city's range. You sure the council won't shut the gates behind us? They might, she said. But the next step always comes with the door closing behind it. The ship ascended. Pressure gauges dropped, gravity eased, and for the first time in generations, human eyes looked upon layers of ocean unseen since the fall. Transparent jelly creatures drifted through the gloom, their tendrils glowing like constellations. Marcus stared out the viewport. It's beautiful. Elara's voice softened. It was always beautiful. We just forgot to look. By the time they reached the upper trenches, the sensors screamed with interference. A cloud of debris drifted around them, fragments of alloy and blackened glass. Not natural. Not human. Kel's voice came through the comlink from the lab deck. Admiral, I've identified the materials. Dominion composition. Battle residue, old, but not ancient. Marcus' jaw tightened. Then someone's been here recently. Elara nodded slowly. Prepare long-range scans. If the Dominion found something buried here, they didn't finish the job. The holographic map flickered to life, revealing a faint energy source just beyond the ridge. A small structure rested there, half buried under sediment, glowing faintly with internal power. Looks like a relay node, Marcus said. Could be a Dominion outpost. Or a listening station, Elara countered. Either way, we're going in. The Abyss Runner settled near the seafloor, its floodlights cutting through drifting silt. The structure rose from the darkness, smooth metallic architecture streaked with corrosion, still humming faintly after centuries. Inside, the corridors were filled with the soft hiss of water vapor and the faint hum of alien machinery. The walls were engraved with Dominion script, still faintly luminescent. Marcus moved ahead with his pulse rifle raised. No heat signatures. Elara brushed her hand across a damaged console. They left this running. Why? A sudden chime echoed through the hall, an activation pulse. Lights along the walls flickered awake, and the central chamber filled with holographic projections, alien figures speaking in a language of clicks and chords. Kel's translation AI filtered the audio. Project Purity, human resistance terminated. Abyss regions uninhabitable, data classified under threat level, return. Marcus frowned. They thought the deep was lethal. They never knew we made it. Until now, Elara said quietly. They're hearing us again. She gestured to the projection core. Download everything. I want Dominion fleet patterns, communication channels, anything that can tell us where they're listening from. As the system transferred data, a secondary hologram appeared, static, degraded, but unmistakably human. A face, scarred and hollow-eyed, flickered into view. This is Captain Enoch Reeve, survivor of Ark 2. If anyone finds this, know that the Dominion took our captured vessels, turned them into prison worlds. They're still out there. Our people, our ancestors, are alive. The hologram glitched, repeating fragments of the message before collapsing into silence. Elara stood motionless, her breath shallow. Alive? Kel's voice trembled through the comms. If this is real, Admiral, we have human prisoners somewhere in Dominion space. Marcus swore under his breath. 3 centuries later, and they're still enslaved. Elara clenched her fists. Then we're going to bring them home. They returned to the Abyss Runner with the data cores secured. Within hours, the ship broke through the upper mantle and rose into the twilight zone, where the ocean grew thin and the first faint glimmers of sunlight filtered down through miles of water. For the first time since Earth's fall, sunlight touched human faces. It wasn't bright, it was fractured, filtered through endless blue, but it was real. Marcus blinked against it, almost in disbelief. We've breached the limit. Elara stared upward. The light still reaches us, she murmured. Even here. Before anyone could reply, alarms erupted. A Dominion scout ship pierced the upper layers, descending fast, a sleek silver dagger slicing through the water. Contact inbound, shouted Marcus. They've locked on to our emissions. Evasive pattern Delta, Elara commanded. No weapons. Not yet. The Dominion craft swept across their bow, scanning them. Its hull gleamed with mirrored scales, alive with blue energy lines. Then a voice crackled through the comms, distorted, cold, unmistakably alien. Unknown biosignature. Identify. Elara activated the translator. This is Admiral Elara Kale of the Abyssal Fleet. Identify yourself. A pause. Then. Human frequency. Impossible. You were eradicated. She allowed herself a thin smile. You were thorough, but not perfect. The alien's voice sharpened. Surrender for examination. Not today! The Abyss Runner banked hard as torpedoes streaked past, exploding in rippling bursts of light. Elara's crew responded with silence, controlled precision honed by generations of pressure-borne warfare. Marcus fired counter-drones, their sonic bursts tearing through the water with seismic force. The alien ship shuddered. Cracks formed along its hull as the Abyss Runner's gravitic field pulsed outward, crushing its frame like paper. Kel's voice came through, strained but calm. Target destabilizing, Admiral. Let it drift. I want them to know we're real. The Dominion vessel crumpled, sinking slowly into the depths, a silent message written in wreckage. When calm returned, Elara stood by the viewport again, watching debris spiral downward. Marcus approached quietly. We just declared our existence to the galaxy. She nodded. Good. Let them prepare. He hesitated. If they send a fleet. They will. Her tone was steady, almost serene. And when they arrive, they'll learn what the abyss made of us. She turned toward the distant light filtering from above, the pale shimmer of a world they hadn't seen in lifetimes. We've found our pass, Marcus. Now it's time the universe sees our footer. The abyss runner glided through water blacker than oil, silent as a heartbeat held too long. The trench below stretched into infinity, a canyon carved by pressure and time. Its sensors whispered warnings, but Admiral Alara Kale ignored them. Her focus was fixed on the faint pulse ahead, a repeating signal buried under centuries of silence. She had listened to it for days, memorizing its rhythm until it felt like breathing. It wasn't just data. It was a voice from humanity's forgotten centuries, echoing through the dark. Marcus Rian leaned over her shoulder, his jaw tight. Still the same pattern? Yes, Alara said softly. No change. It's deliberate, too structured for a random anomaly. He frowned at the monitor. If it's Dominion tech, it's old. They abandoned this sector long ago. Could be a trap. Or a reminder, she countered. The last survivors left us breadcrumbs. We follow them, or we stay buried forever. Marcus didn't argue further. He'd seen that look in her eyes before, resolve sharp enough to cut through fear. The ship descended deeper, past the last known cartographic grid. External lights pierced through silt, illuminating ruins twisted into grotesque shapes. The remains of human descent structures, early colony hulls, now fossilized in the sediment. Names still faintly visible on corroded plating: Haven 9, Deep Star, Shelter's End. Kelmora's voice crackled through the comms from the lab deck. Admiral, I'm reading faint biosignatures inside the next structure. Weak, intermittent, like residual genetic echoes. Not Dominion, not ours. Show me, Alara said. The holographic display rendered the target, a sealed chamber hidden under layers of rock and coral. Inside, faint shapes floated in suspension, organic, humanoid, asleep or dead. Marcus squinted. They can't be alive. Open a line, she ordered. Ma'am, if those pods breach, the pressure will. Do it. Mechanical arms extended from the abyss runner's hull, carving through the hardened sediment. The chamber walls cracked open like brittle bone, releasing a bloom of phosphorescent mist. As it cleared, they saw them, humans. Dozens of cryopods lined in rows, ancient and scarred but intact. Inside each, figures slept, their faces pale and ingeed. The ship's lights reflected in their eyes as if the past itself had awoken. Kel's voice trembled. That's not possible. These pods predate the fall. Alara's throat tightened. They made it this far down. They tried to outlast extinction. Marcus stared through the viewport. Then the abyss didn't just make survivors. It kept the dead waiting for witnesses. The cryofield flickered. One pod status light pulsed amber, then green. A hiss of decompression followed, and the chamber filled with a low mechanical hum. Alara and Marcus exchanged a glance before donning helmets and boarding the docking pod. Inside, the air was stale but breathable. Frost coated the floor. The pod cracked open with a sigh of escaping air, and the man inside took a shuddering breath. Alara stepped forward cautiously. You're safe. You're among your own. The man's eyes opened, gray, unfocused. His voice rasped like stone grinding. This isn't Earth. No, she said gently. It's what's left of it. 3 centuries have passed. He blinked slowly, confusion dawning into horror. 300? His hands trembled. We were supposed to wake after 10. Dominion patrols, they were coming. We sealed the Ark. Alara leaned closer. You were on Ark 5? He nodded weakly. We had orders to protect the Exodus data. If we failed, the next generation would never rise. Kel's voice came through her calm. Admiral, that confirms it. He's carrying an implant, old command-grade encryption. We can't decode it without risking damage. Alara studied the survivor. We won't harm him. Let him speak. The man coughed, gripping her arm. They came from the stars, burned everything, said humanity was over. But we sent the message before the end. We warned whoever might live. They're coming back. Marcus's face hardened. The Dominion? The man nodded. They found something worse. A weapon buried in their wars. If they return here, it's to finish what they started. Back aboard the Abyss Runner, the team gathered around the revived man, identified as Captain Enoch Reeve of the original Ark Initiative. His memory was fragmented, but his data core contained maps, coordinates, and one encrypted file marked only with a single word: home. Kel stared at the decrypted segments. The map doesn't lead to the ocean. It leads out. Beyond the crust. Straight into orbit. Alara's pulse quickened. Then this wasn't a tomb. It was a launch site. Marcus looked at her sharply. You're thinking of leaving the abyss? I'm thinking of finishing what they started, she said. We've built fleets that can survive volcanic pressure. It's time to see if they can break through sky. Kel hesitated. If we ascend, we risk detection. Dominion sensors could still monitor upper atmosphere corridors. Alara turned toward the viewport, where currents shimmered like flowing glass. Then let them see us. Let them know the dark they feared now holds something alive. Hours later, the engineering decks roared to life. Reactor chambers pulsed with biothermal energy as the Abyss Runner prepared for vertical ascent. Every system hummed like a heartbeat too long denied the light. Marcus joined Alara on the command bridge. Hull integrity at 98%. Oxygen stabilization ready. Once we breach the exosphere, we'll be exposed. Noted, she said. Activate cloaking fields. Minimal emissions. We rise slow. The engines ignited with a deep, resonant hum. The ship shuddered as it clawed upward through centuries of pressure. The abyss resisted, like a living thing unwilling to release what it had shaped. Water gave way to light, thin, fractured rays bleeding through as they reached the shallows. Then, for the first time in recorded human memory, the Abyss Runner broke the surface. Daylight struck the hull. Pure, unfiltered sunlight, white and blinding. For a long moment, no one moved. The ocean stretched endless and silent around them, untouched by alien hands, its horizon glimmering gold under a sky so vast it felt impossible. Marcus removed his helmet, breathing in the thin air. It smells wrong. Dry. Empty. Alara smiled faintly. It smells alive. They stood beneath the sun like ghosts stepping into their own myth. Around them, the world was quiet, until the sensors blared in warning. Kel's voice burst through the comms. Contact! High orbit! Multiple signatures inbound. Dominion architecture confirmed. Marcus's eyes widened. They saw us. They were waiting. Alara's expression didn't falter. Then they'll learn what the abyss sent back. The skies split open as alien ships descended, their hulls gleaming with cruel symmetry. The Abyss Runner dove beneath the waves, launching a burst of sonic countermeasures that shattered the water into light. The ocean swallowed them again, but the chase had begun. Back in Tartarus Deep, the first intercepted Dominion broadcast arrived, a single transmission decoded through static. Human frequency detected. Origin Earth sector. Purification incomplete. Mobilizing fleets. In that instant, the truth rippled through every abyssal city. Humanity's silence was broken. Alara stood before the fleet display as it came alive, one ship after another activating, power cores flaring like newborn stars beneath the ocean. Marcus turned to her, voice low. We can still hide. The black of the ocean bled into the black of space, and for the first time in 3 centuries, humanity broke through the surface not to flee, but to hunt. The Abyss fleet ascended like a phantom storm. Hulls forged under unimaginable pressure gleamed as they pierced the clouds. Each vessel carried a faint bioluminescent glow, a remnant of their abyssal evolution. They were machines of survival, alive in ways the galaxy had forgotten. From orbit, the Earth appeared scarred yet defiant. Craters from the ancient war still marred its surface, but blue light returned to its oceans. And in that fragile beauty, the Celeste Dominion arrived. Admiral Alara Kale stood on the bridge of the Leviathan, her flagship and the heart of the fleet. The room pulsed with deep blue lighting, calm but tense. Across the habitable, Dominion vessels flickered into focus, sleek, winged, flawless in their arrogance. Marcus Rian studied the data stream beside her. 30 warships, all heavy class. They're forming a blockade above low orbit. Alara's eyes narrowed. They think we're relics crawling out of the dark. Kelmora's voice filtered in from the science deck. They're transmitting. Shall I open the channel? Let's hear them. The main display flared to life, revealing a tall, silver-skinned being in ceremonial armor. The Dominion insignia burned like a brand across his chest. His voice carried a smooth, metallic resonance, calm, practiced authority. This is Archon Varys of the Celeste Dominion. You are identified as human derivatives. You will surrender for containment and classification. Non-compliance will result in erasure. Alara tilted her head slightly. Containment? You exterminated us once already. How did that work out? The alien's golden eyes narrowed. You are an aberration. Survival outside Dominion parameters is impossible. Impossible? She allowed a thin smile. You've just met the impossible. The transmission cut. Silence followed, heavy as pressure itself. Marcus exhaled slowly. He's not bluffing, Alara. That fleet could glass what's left of the surface in minutes. I'm counting on his overconfidence, she replied. Deploy veil fields. Let them think we're few. They'll commit early, and that's when the deep will rise. In the void, the first shots flared. Lances of white energy streaked toward the Leviathan, cutting through debris fields and vaporizing what they touched. Alara didn't flinch. Deflectors up. Return fire with silent payloads only. The abyss-born weaponry wasn't like anything the galaxy had seen. Instead of plasma, they used implosion torpedoes, spheres that collapsed pressure into gravitational tears. When they struck, Dominion shields folded inward like crushed glass. 3 enemy ships vanished without sound. The others hesitated. Marcus grinned. I think we have their attention. Good, Alara said. Now let's give them a reason to remember us. The fleet unfolded from the dark like an awakening Leviathan. Submarine carriers surfaced from the ocean, transforming mid-rise as hull plating shifted and expanded. Hybrid propulsion systems roared to life, half thruster, half biomechanical muscle. Hundreds of ships launched simultaneously, their engines pulsing with abyssal blue. They climbed through storm clouds and broke into the vacuum above. Every broadcast channel in the Dominion network lit up with the same message. Unregistered fleet detected. Human origin confirmed. Archon Varys watched from his command spire aboard the dreadnought Solera Prime. His lips curled in disdain. So the vermin learned to swim. A subordinate officer approached. Orders, my lord? Purge them. Burn the oceans they crawled from. The first true battle began above the ruins of old Earth. Dominion cruisers formed a defensive net, firing synchronized volleys of plasma that turned the atmosphere into glowing arcs of fire. The Abyss fleet moved differently, fluid, silent, coordinated by Neuralink systems that mimicked the movement of a single living being. Their ships twisted between trajectories, their torpedoes weaving through enemy fire like guided instincts. Left flank breaking! Marcus shouted. Ilara's voice cut through the chaos. Release the shade drones. Formation Vortex 3. No survivors. From the Leviathan's underbelly, thousands of microdrones emerged, each no larger than a blade. They spread through the Dominion ranks, generating distortion fields that shattered targeting systems. Enemy vessels began firing blind, striking one another in confusion. Kel's tone held all. Their network's collapsing. They can't coordinate. Alara's eyes were fixed on the central dreadnought. Then we go for the head. The Solera Prime dwarfed every ship in the human fleet. Its hull shimmered with layered shields, a cathedral of polished death. But Alara wasn't looking for weakness, she was looking for rhythm. Dominion systems were mathematical, predictable. The Abyss had taught her patience. Align the pulse cannons, she ordered. Target resonance frequency 0.042, synchronize on my mark. Marcus blinked. That's their power cycle window. Exactly, she said. Pressure meets arrogance. The Leviathan powered up. Its main cannon glowed a deep blue, light bent inward, gathering energy from the depths of the planet itself. When it fired, the beam didn't burn, it crushed. The Dominion flagship's shields warped, folded, and then shattered. The explosion was soundless in the void, but the vibration reached every human sensor like thunder in the soul. Varys staggered as the deck beneath him trembled. Impossible! On the Leviathan, Elara's tone remained calm. You wanted containment. Consider this expansion. But victory was never simple. From the wreckage, new signals emerged, Dominion reinforcements warping into orbit. Hundreds of ships, surrounding Earth like a net of fire. Kel's voice turned grim. Admiral, their numbers are tripling by the minute. Marcus clenched his jaw. We can't win this head-on. We don't have to, Elara said. We change the terrain. She opened the comm to all fleet units. All ships, switch to Omega depth formation. Initiate seismic chain. The words spread through the fleet like a command from the abyss itself. The ships dove back into the atmosphere, engines flaring. Within moments, the oceans boiled as abyssal reactors synchronized with the Earth's magnetic core. Are you serious? Marcus asked, eyes wide. You're weaponizing the planet? Elara's voice was steady. It was our cradle. It can be our shield. Deep below, hidden reactors triggered a cascading surge through the crust. The planet's magnetic field erupted outward, forming a barrier of ionized energy that engulfed the Dominion fleet. One by one, alien ships overloaded, their systems frying under electromagnetic fury. The sky filled with light, auroras born from vengeance. Kel whispered through the static, half in disbelief. They can't sustain orbit, they're retreating. Elara watched their formation break apart. No. They're recalculating. Varys isn't finished. Moments later, the Dominion flagship reappeared, damaged but alive. Its hull split open, revealing a massive planetary cannon. Marcus swore. He's going to scorch the surface. Elara's expression hardened. Not if the deep takes him first. She turned to the helm. Full acceleration. Direct collision vector. Marcus's eyes widened. That's suicide. It's symmetry, she replied quietly. They buried us once. Let's return the favor. The stars were still burning when silence fell. The Dominion fleet was shattered, but the victory came at a cost measured in ghosts. The Leviathan, flagship of the Abyss fleet, was gone, pulled into the implosion it had unleashed. The oceans boiled, the clouds glowed from the energy discharge, and Earth, once again, stood at the edge of rebirth and ruin. From the bridge of the Nereid, Commander Marcus Rian watched the aftermath unfold on the tactical screen. Waves of wreckage drifted through orbit, fragments of Dominion ships colliding with glowing debris from humanity's own. Among it all, faint signatures flickered and faded, echoes of those lost in the final clash. Status on the surface? He asked quietly. Kelmora, exhausted and pale, studied the monitors. The magnetic storm has stabilized. Lower domes are intact, but communications are erratic. Tartarus Deep is still dark. Marcus exhaled slowly. Admiral Kale's last transmission hasn't repeated? Kel shook his head. Just the same phrase. Rise. Then silence. He stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. Then that's what we'll do. The Dominion remnants weren't gone. They were wounded, scattered across the outer system, their formations broken, but not destroyed. And among the fragments of their network, one signal pulsed with stubborn persistence, the Archon's beacon. Marcus turned toward the war table as the data resolved. A single Dominion dreadnought was limping toward Mars orbit, its engines failing, its weapons systems still active. Kel frowned. Varys survived. Marcus' expression hardened. Then so does our war. He issued the order without hesitation. Prepare the fleet for pursuit. We end this where it began. The Nereid led a formation of 15 surviving vessels across the void. Their hulls bore scars of the last battle, melted plates, exposed veins of bioreactive alloy, but they moved with purpose. The silence between stars was filled only with the low hum of reactors and the rhythmic pulse of the neural link connecting them all. Kel broke the silence. You know what she'd say. Marcus didn't look away from the viewport. That vengeance isn't victory. She believed survival meant evolution, not destruction. Marcus's jaw tightened. And Varys believes extermination is destiny. If we leave him alive, he'll summon another fleet. Kel's reply came softly. So we walked the same edge they did. Hours later, the fleet reached Mars' orbit. The Dominion dreadnought hung above the rust-red planet like a broken god, vast, cracked, leaking energy. Still, its main weapon array pulsed weakly, preparing for one last act of defiance. Marcus opened a transmission channel. Archon Varys. This is Commander Rian of the Abyssal Fleet. You've lost. Shut down your systems and surrender. Static hissed, then the alien's voice came through, ragged but unmistakably proud. You think victory belongs to the fallen? You crawled out of mud, but you remain filth. You learned to hide in pressure, not to lead among stars. Marcus's tone didn't change. You talk too much for a man surrounded by ghosts. You misunderstand, human. The Dominion never dies. You are only the shadow of what we cleansed. Funny, Marcus said quietly. Shadows tend to outlast the fire. He cut the line. All ships, weapons ready. Kel hesitated. If we destroy him here, we'll destabilize the orbit. The debris could rain back toward Earth. Marcus's eyes flicked to the tactical map. Then we find another way. Inside the Dominion dreadnought, Varys stood amidst ruin. His bridge was a cathedral of dying light, consoles flickering, alien symbols crawling across shattered screens. Around him, his crew lay dead or dying, yet his hands never stopped moving across the command interface. Activate planetary core sequence, he hissed. If I am to fall, I will drag your planet into the abyss you cherish. A low hum rose from deep within the vessel. The dreadnought's reactors began to overheat, its engines preparing to collapse into a singularity powerful enough to crack the Martian crust. Kel's voice cut through the static on Nereid's bridge. He's overloading his core. The blast will annihilate Mars and destabilize Earth's orbit. Marcus didn't hesitate. How long until detonation? 17 minutes. He turned to his officers. Then we board. Kel's eyes widened. That's suicide. I've heard that before, Marcus said, loading his sidearm. And I'm still here. The Nereid strike team launched in stealth pods, cutting through the debris field with precision. As they docked on the dreadnought's fractured hull, the interior lights pulsed like veins under translucent skin. Marcus led the team through twisted corridors, the floor coated with residue that shimmered faintly in zero gravity. Every breath echoed in their helmets. Kel's voice guided them through the neural link. You're close to the reactor chamber. But I'm reading a secondary power source, a hybrid signature. Human tech spliced into Dominion core systems. Marcus frowned. Human? They breached the final door, and froze. At the center of the reactor chamber stood a containment field. Inside it, suspended in light, was Admiral Alara Kale. Alive. Her body was wired into the core, neural cables running from her spine into Dominion interfaces. Her eyes fluttered open as the team entered. Marcus! Her voice was faint but steady. You shouldn't have come. He moved toward her. We thought you were gone. I was. Varys pulled me from the wreckage, to study what the abyss made of us. Her gaze darkened. He wants to use me to open a gateway. A weapon that bends gravity. He calls it ascension. Marcus shook his head. We're getting you out. You can't. She looked past him at the pulsing core. If we disconnect me, the containment fails. The singularity triggers. You'll lose both planets. Kel's voice came through the comms, urgent. Admiral, can you override the Dominion core remotely? Her eyes met Marcus's. Only manually. Someone has to stay. Marcus's stomach sank. No. We've already lost too much. She smiled faintly. Then don't call it loss. Call it inheritance. Before he could stop her, she pressed her hand against the control sphere. Light engulfed the chamber as the neural circuits flared. The cables retracted into the core, her energy feeding the containment fields. Varys appeared on the upper walkway, clutching a plasma blade. His armor was cracked, but his fury burned. You think one life redeems a species? Marcus raised his rifle. No. But hers defines it. He fired. The blast struck Varys square in the chest, throwing him into the reactor's pit. The Archon's scream was swallowed by light. The dreadnought's core began to implode, its mass folding inward. Marcus stood motionless for a moment, watching Alara through the fading glow. Humanity will remember you, he whispered. Her final words reached him through static. Make sure it's worth remembering. He turned and sprinted for the exit as the corridors warped around him. The team reached their pods seconds before the dreadnought vanished into its own gravity well. From orbit, the explosion bloomed like a star. Then it collapsed, leaving only silence and a field of drifting light. On the Nereid, Kel stared at the display, unable to speak. Marcus stood beside him, helmet in hand, eyes fixed on the void. She stopped it, Kel said finally. The singularity's gone. Earth's orbit is stable. Marcus nodded. She gave us a world to rebuild. The world was quiet for the first time in centuries. No alarms. No bombardments. Only the slow, rhythmic pulse of waves washing against the scarred coasts of a reborn Earth. The air smelled of salt and ozone, heavy with the ghosts of everything lost and the promise of what could come next. From the observation deck of the Nereid, Marcus Rian looked down at the planet that had cost them everything. The seas glimmered faintly under the rebuilt atmosphere, light refracted across a surface that was once ash. What had been ruin was now fertile again. Life, small and stubborn, had begun to return. Kel Mora approached quietly, datapad in hand. Atmospheric stabilization is holding, he said. Oxygen levels are rising faster than projections. The oceans have purified most of the biocontaminants. The planet's healing. Marcus didn't look up. It should. She gave it back its heartbeat. Kel nodded, understanding without needing to ask whom he meant. We recovered fragments of her neural data from the wreckage, he added. Half corrupted, but enough to confirm the containment sequence worked. The Dominion singularity was fully neutralized. Marcus exhaled, the sound closer to a sigh than relief. Then the war really is over. Kel hesitated. For now. But the Dominion's empire spanned hundreds of systems. Someone will come looking. Marcus turned to face him. Then we make sure what they find isn't prey. 3 weeks later, the surviving abyssal fleet hovered above the Pacific Rift. From orbit, the trench looked like a scar across the planet, dark, ancient, and alive. Inside it, Tartarus Deep glowed again. Engineers worked tirelessly to rebuild what was left of the lower colonies, linking shattered cities with new biothermal conduits. The people of the abyss had come to the surface for the first time in generations. They walked beaches their ancestors had only read about in archived memory. Children squinted against sunlight they had never seen, their laughter echoing through ruins older than their bloodlines. For all their adaptations, for all the genetic shaping that had let them survive the crushing dark, they were still human. The light didn't reject them, it embraced them. Marcus stood on the coastal cliffs overlooking the construction of the new Capitol Dome, Aquila Station. Beneath him, crews hauled the last fragments of Dominion wreckage into containment zones. Some pieces still glowed faintly, pulsing with alien energy. He heard Kel approach behind him, boots crunching on gravel. They're asking for a name, Kel said. For the first city of the new age. Marcus kept his eyes on the horizon. Call it Kale's Promise. Kel smiled faintly. Fitting. She gave us a world, Marcus said quietly. The least we can do is remember who bought the dawn. Kel looked at him, voice thoughtful. You've changed. So has the world. That night, the fleet gathered over the Pacific in silent formation. The ceremony was simple, no grand speeches, no fireworks. Just a moment of unity. Marcus stood on the bridge, the sea of stars reflected in his visor. Every ship broadcast the same image, a single blue light glowing within darkness. It pulsed once every second, synchronized to the frequency of Earth's magnetic core, the rhythm Alara had once used to guide the fleet home. Kel's voice came softly through the comms. "Signals ready." Marcus gave a nod. "Begin transmission." Across every frequency once used by the Celeste Dominion, a message echoed through the void. "To any who hear this, humanity endures. We were cast into the abyss and returned remade. We seek no conquest, only truth. The darkness tempered us, the light will define us. Approach with peace, or remember what the abyss taught us." The message repeated twice, then faded. Silence filled the comms. Kel exhaled. "That should get their attention." "It's not a threat," Marcus said quietly. "It's a warning written in respect. Think they'll understand the difference?" He allowed a faint smile. "No. But they'll learn." Days passed into weeks. Reconstruction continued. Cities rose along old coasts, their architecture merging human resilience with abyssal design, curved forms, living alloys, structures that adapted to weather and tide. The people didn't build walls, they built bridges. Humanity had finally learned the cost of separation. Children born after the war were already different, stronger, calmer, their eyes reflecting faint bioluminescent rings inherited from their ancestors below. They grew up with sunlight and seawater, equally at home in air or depth. For the first time in remembered history, humanity was unified, not by fear, but by choice. Kel found Marcus at the docks one morning, watching a new generation of exploration vessels preparing to launch. "Scouts heading for the outer system," Kel said. "They're calling themselves the Ascendant Corps." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Bold name. They say they want to see what's left of the Dominion." He nodded slowly. "They'll find ashes. But sometimes ashes hide seeds." Kel studied him. "And you? What happens to the man who carried humanity out of the dark?" Marcus gave a small, tired smile. "He learns how to live in the light." That evening, Marcus walked alone along the beach where the first landing pods had touched ground. The tide shimmered silver under the twin moons. The air was cool, filled with the faint hum of distant reactors and the calls of seabirds that had returned after centuries of silence. He stopped near a memorial carved into the rock, a monument to those who had never returned from the final battle. At its center, etched deep into the obsidian stone, were the words, "They sent us to the abyss. We came back as its voice." He traced the inscription with his fingertips. "You kept your promise," he whispered. "Now it's our turn." Behind him, Kel's voice carried through the wind. "They've confirmed it. The last Dominion transmission was intercepted before its collapse. A single phrase, the abyss awakens." Marcus turned slowly. "Meaning?" Kel shook his head. "No idea. But it wasn't directed at us. It was sent beyond their own borders." Marcus stared toward the stars, their cold light glimmering like distant eyes. "Then someone's listening." He looked back at the sea, vast, calm, eternal. "We'll be ready. This time, the abyss answers on its own terms." As dawn crept across the horizon, the first sunrise of the new era bathed the world in gold. The ocean reflected the light like molten glass, carrying it deep into the trenches where humanity had once hidden. In those depths, dormant sensors awoke, ancient networks pulsing to life. The deep still remembered its children. And for the first time, light reached where it never had before. Marcus stood at the shoreline as the fleet ascended from the water behind him, engines glowing faint blue against the morning sky. Kel joined him, watching in silence. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Marcus said quietly. Kel nodded. "It's strange. We spent centuries dreaming of the stars. And now the most beautiful thing we've ever seen is home." Marcus's gaze stayed on the horizon. "That's what Alara understood. The stars aren't our destiny. They're our reflection. What we find out there will always begin here." He turned and walked toward the awaiting shuttle, leaving only footprints in the wet sand. The waves rolled over them a moment later, erasing the marks, but not the path. The light had finally found the deep. And humanity, at last, had found itself.